Michael Anthony Wright, songwriter, guitarist, writer, creative facilitator, and all-round nice dude.
Oh, thanks.
I finished off a nice dude there. I always try and get a wee end for people, when they come in. So, Tony, you were born in Ballymoney.
I was.
And then, at what stage did you move then to the North Coast?
Well, I was pretty sharpish. As soon as they let me out of the hospital, pretty much. But
Did you get a pair of DMs on straight away and just run to the port?
I was on a skateboard, just came flying out of me, man, just shot down, just straight out onto the skateboard, just heel flip out, just straight down to Port Stewart. But no, we were in Port Stewart because I was the second born.
Yeah.
And
so many was in your...
The family was four of us.
Four of us. So
older brother.
Just tell the world out there your family setup then.
Yeah, my mum and my dad, Ursula and Michael, and my brother Dario, and he's 3 years older than me. Dario, because as you can tell just from looking at me, clearly that I'm Italian, so quarter Italian.
Well, I could say to the people there, you made a beautiful meal there just for us earlier on there down in the kitchen,
I like to treat people well.
And what did you call that meal that you put out for us earlier on?
That was a bowl of Frosties.
Lethal.
They're great.
They're lethal. Like, I was me thinking I'll just get the man of scone, and you landed with spaghetti, meatballs, and a big pile of tomato sauce. It was just going to start a fight to me. So growing up in the North Coast, then, what was that like for yourself?
At the time, I hated it. At the time, I was just like, I need to get away from here where something's happening, and it was like it was in Port Stewart to begin with, and then moved to Coleraine, and it was just, but I was still in school in Port Stewart, so I was there all the time. But it was weird because it was just like that Smith song or that Morrissey song, Every Day's Like Sunday.
Yeah.
Like just the seaside town. When it's out of season.
Did you get the branch and all like he had in the video?
The flowers down the back.
Slapping your back and all that.
But thankfully I'm not a racist.
Back then, I suppose, for the port in general, for people like me up here, it would have been somewhere where people would have went in the summer. So was there other time of the year, was it sort of a bit darker and gloomier?
Well, we were there after Spuds had closed. By the time we came of age,
Spuds was an old rock club, just for
Spuds
people to know out there.
So there was no venue or whatever. There was Kelly started doing bands, so we had somewhere to go there. But I remember there was a music collective in Portrush, and music was really the kind of the way out, as I saw it. Not the way out of the area, but just the way out to meet more like-minded people and things like that, and meet people at different schools. Yeah. And things like that, and music and the music collective. Like I really started taking music seriously when I was 14.
Yeah, just when you're out there at 14, I found it fascinating. Your mother taught you guitar at 8 years of age, just when you're there. What would have been your first tune then you would have learned?
The very first song I learned was Leaving on a Jet Plane by John Denver. So
I bet you every auntie and uncle loved you. Were you
Still do.
And did they make you play it? There's one.
No, that's the thing, because everybody, there was one side, my mum's side of the family was very musical. But it was totally a fluke that I learned to play guitar. It was an accident. Like, I went for orchestra tryouts at my primary school.
And so what instrument did you play there?
And I wanted to play violin. I wanted to go and play violin, and I was the only boy that went for the orchestra tryouts. And I just was never good at football. Like, I'm pretty short now. I was really small then. Like, I was a really small kid. And I wasn't interested in sports and things, as you can probably tell. And it's...
The creativity.
I went along for the tryouts, and they did the key test where they would like play a note and you had to sing it. And I was the only boy, and I was really embarrassed kind of like by it. And I still was like, they were doing it. And so I fluffed the notes, and the music teacher said to me, she was like, I'm afraid you don't have a musical note in your body, Tony. You should stick to football. And I didn't like football or anything like that, so I was gutted. And I was picked up from school, and my mum could see I was upset. She was like, how did it go? And I was like, oh, they said this. And she was furious, because what sort of teacher says that to her?
Well, your mother just let up and just goes, that's my son.
She was just like, she went back to the house and she dusted down her old guitar, because she had, in the 60s was playing Joan Baez and Bob Dylan songs, things like that, and then, so she dusted down her guitar, and every day for a while, like, we sat down, and she would sit with me, and she had her guitar, and they got me a smaller one, and I would sit and just kind of play Leave It on a Jet Plane with her, and then it would move on to Dylan and Joan Baez and things like that. But it was all completely from her. I didn't initially set out to go, I'm going to play the guitar.
Yeah.
It just kind of happened. And then when I was about 11, I got an electric and started listening to, I was listening to like Public Enemy and Guns N' Roses, but then I heard Nirvana and it was like, this is, you know.
And that let you up. That let you up. And so I suppose you didn't join the orchestra then?
No, but in the school, the headmaster got wind of it. And our headmaster, our school, his daughter was Brina Corrigan, that was in the beautiful South. And sang "I Need It All the Time." She was my babysitter like, when I was a kid.
Way.
My first ever memory is waiting for my folks to get back from seeing Springsteen and Slane, and my babysitter was Brina Corrigan. Is it any wonder I'm a musician? Just like, approve me, approve me. Like, but yeah. So it was. He heard that I'd learned to play guitar, and he was like, "Well, we don't have a guitar in the orchestra. Let's bring Tony in," and he would sit me beside him to follow the chords because I couldn't read music, and I still can't read music.
So you're going by ear all the time?
Always been going by ear.
And so I suppose if you've had to hold on even more then to get it by ear, obviously if there's people out there, because you've done a lot of different work with different people of different styles, and obviously some of them be reading music off a sheet.
Yeah.
But that's not an uncommon thing, and it's something that a lot of people that write their own music, that they don't be able to read music. And
there's very few of my kind of like, you know, people who discuss songwriting with that are very confident with sight reading and things like that.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Like some of them can do it and they will write that way, but I think, because I kind of, when I really got into it was in that grungy punk rock kind of DIY thing, so it seemed like kind of was like, no, I need to figure this out for myself.
Yeah, and it was a better way, and you did.
And I think my ears were stronger for it.
Yeah, and so you mentioned there at 14 years of age, then you were. So did you sort of, when the collective as such started? Were you then? Did you get who was your mates growing up, and how did that all, you know?
Well, there was I was really fortunate. Like the core friends that I had growing up, we all were kind of into music and got into bands and things, but other musicians were at different levels. And I went to Dominican in Port Stewart, and the band that had formed there was a surplus of guitarists, and I was kind of elbowed out. They were kind of like, well, you know, you're not as good as the other guitarists, so like.
You're the only one still doing it.
Yeah. So, but that's the thing. And then I ended up, there was a band at Corey and Inst, and they were looking for a singer, and somebody just kind of suggested, it's like, oh, that guy Tony, like I think he played me some songs once. I think he sings a little bit. So then I met up with these guys I'd never really met before. I'd met them once at their old band's rehearsal. They used to rehearse above a greengrocer's in Coleraine called the Salad Bowl near the Diamond that isn't there anymore. And so we went along, and you know,
was their name anything to do with fruit or anything?
They were called Head Shrinker.
Head Shrinker.
They were called Head Shrinker. I remember that. But yeah, we went along, and then and then I met them, and then went to a rehearsal at like one of their garages, and we started and went in, and we played. Everybody was into Ash and Oasis and things like that, and I was just being a bit. I guess I was being a bit hipsterish because it was like, no, there's too many people know them. So I kind of was like, what about Sonic Youth and Fugazi and these bands and stuff like that, whatever.
Yeah.
And
well, they're bands that have like nearly like a cult following and have transported onto mainstream too.
Exactly.
But Fugazi are one of them trailblazers of
just
sound,
complete, like they're the kings, the DIY stuff, you know, like whatever. And so I suggested we did that, and then also said, and this was kind of weird at the time because we were 14. I was like, I don't want to do covers. It's okay us doing this here in a garage, but I want to do our own songs.
Yeah.
Here's some of mine. And then would encourage the other guys, right? And they were great. They would all come with ideas, and so there was bands playing, and you would go to a gig of like some of the local bands, and pretty much all the bands were playing the same songs because they were doing Oasis songs or Nirvana or Green Day or Oasis.
You could have went outside and had 14 Kurtz with 14 different people and come back in and then still heard the same set, you say?
Well, John Black that was in the Faro, Johnny Adger that was in Sochi from Faro, those two were in a band. That, like, I remember the first kind of Pepperbook gig that we played. And
were they weren't in Pepperbook, were they?
They weren't in Pepperbook. No. They were they were slightly older.
Like you were young then, Tony.
Like I was the youngest of the scene or whatever. Everyone else was about a year older than me or whatever. But I remember that we played one Oasis song, and they had played an Oasis song as well. But they said beforehand, they were like, "This is how it should be played." And we were like, "What?" So then we went up and just terrorized the place.
So the rivalry was there.
It was already there. But then we were kind of going, "You guys are all doing covers." We did 4 covers. The rest were all originals.
And how did that go down? And were people just sort of, was their mindset all about covers, or was it a place where you could try new ideas?
I think people were kind of like cool. There was one older band called Carnivore 7 that were so cool. There's a guy called John Beckwell in that band that went on Sub 60. Were a band about 10 years ago and stuff that used to tour, used to play with Fighting with Wire and Zombie Safari Park and stuff like that, and LaFaro and
Zombie Safari Park were
that was the band that ended up years later because then when Pepperbook kind of sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself, but it's like the older guys in the scene or whatever.
The older guys are probably 16 or 17.
They were 18, 19.
They were so ancient, weren't they, Tony? Did you look up and go, "Yours are past this rock and roll"?
They were still cool. It was really cool to me, but they came over and went, "This kid knows who Sonic Youth is."
Yeah.
Okay, and they're playing their own.
Yeah, and your mother brought you up in great music too.
Yeah, exactly. So it was all there and kind of, and then it was weird because, like I didn't drink really when I was a teenager or anything. Like all I cared about was music and writing songs and my guitar, and it was just I was nowhere.
Were you a skateboarder or anything?
I tried, but then
roller skates, or
it was kind of like when I figured
which were the coolest, roller skates or skateboarders going down by the port? Skateboarders. Did they have a sort of cooler look or what? Or
they were just a bit. They were a bit kind of meaner and kind of like they were a bit more like you were a bit kind of like if you were accepted by the skateboarders, which I kind of was because I had a skateboard, but I'd never skated because I was scared of breaking my wrists and not being able to play. And
that's definitely something that would put you off doing it.
That was it, yeah.
Did you ever attempt it? Did you ever go for that one wee spin and come off or jump off and go, "Oh, look at that"?
A few times destroyed my elbows and wrecked me and just like going into bowls. And I would use it as a mode of transport in places, but it was very rarely that I would do tricks.
Because it's not often you see the actual skateboarders themselves that are really cool and good at wearing any type of...
Yeah.
Maybe it's a thing now, is it?
I think now what's really cool because you never saw girls skating when I was a kid, and now you see more girls skating than guys. It's great.
And down around say the port, but that would have been a place probably that seemed to happen a lot. Anytime I was ever down a few times over the years, and even back in the days whenever they used to have the gatherings with all the mod rockers and all that there, and there was always skateboarding about, and always things going on,
I think there was a yearly battle between the skateboarders and the milk cup footballers that would come over.
Oh, that's the youth football championship.
Yeah.
So they were trying to be all grungy and cool on their skateboards, and these are guys coming in their Nike.
They were super healthy, kind of like, so it was just perfect.
I'm Man United Junior, That's a real fact.
So there'd be some skater and get all in young David Beckham's face and all this stuff.
Well, I suppose they were welcoming them to their town.
Yeah.
You mentioned Pepperbook, and I remember myself away years ago when I was in my own band, being on the Energy Fields CD. You were on that CD, Pepperbook.
Yeah.
Yeah, and John O'Neill.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
it was like the Nerve Center one with
John O'Neill. The whole thing was, old friend, was that they were looking for. There was always this thing that the scene happened in the two main cities. I suppose a kind of a thing we would have been talking about, and that reason maybe the festival happening too, being in the middle of everything. So it was a case of then John at the time, he would have been, when the Nerve Centre were in the early days, he would have been sort of like an advisor and been in and out, not full time, but maybe days and stuff.
Yeah.
And because I remember studying up on it, and he'd done the history of music, which was amazing, and showing me how a certain Motown song, he just speed it up and all of a sudden it becomes another song, if you get me drift. And it was really interesting, and he was all into Motown. And I remember at the time it was they were looking for rural acts and that weren't city based, and because your name came up to me, and then clicked in me that I don't know who you toured were. There was
we did like would have been.
There was a couple of gigs you had to do.
Marty McGill, like Marty, he was in Lookage, and then probably came through that maybe.
Yeah. So Marty and so was Marty. Did Marty go out then and play with your band?
Well, because there was Pepperbrook the collective, the Portrush Music Collective. One day, a guy came to talk to the bands. And we didn't really take it seriously. We were just like, like I was a kid, like I was 15 or whatever, and I was just like,
you were listening to none.
Yeah, and
you had it sus.
And then but we'd won a battle of the bands before that. And we got some recording time, and like any young band, that's given 5 days of recording time. Instead of just doing a couple of songs, we were like, let's record every song we have. But we were so well rehearsed, because we rehearsed every day. Like during the summer we rehearsed every day, and then when we were back at school, it was still 3 times a week we would rehearse or whatever, and then the summer it was every day. So we were really, really tight. So when we did go in the studio, we were just like, yep, cool. So we recorded all that. We gave this guy that came to speak at the Music Collective a tape. I didn't even give it to him. Our drummer did, Graham. He gave it to him, and we didn't think anything of it. And then Graham phoned me one day, just kind of like phoned the house before mobiles or whatever, and just was...
Just for people out there, Tony, that don't know what a phone is in a house.
There was this like thing tethered to the wall.
And it rang flat out, didn't it?
It rang flat. Well, it did in our place because my parents went to chip. I lived above
everybody
a
in the house, would you go and get that? Would you go and get it?
I couldn't, because we lived above a chippy, so someone else had answering because it was an order for the chippy.
Oh, Jesus Christ. So it did ringing up about you getting a recording, and really you're thinking...
He's ordering a fish supper.
A fish supper. Or give me 2 battered sausages there and a chip, please.
Lashons of vinegar or big man. Lashons.
And you getting the biggest break in your career at that time, and you're scared of them ordering some big fry-up.
Well, this is the thing. He phoned Graham, our drummer, and then Graham phoned me going, that guy really liked our stuff. And I was like, what? Who? Like, that guy, he was from BMG Music Publishing. And I was like, what? Like, they want us to go and record again some of songs, and they want to sign us. And I was like, what? So they sent us, and they wanted to send us to the studio that they used, but we were like, no, I want to use the guy that we recorded before because we know him. So it was Einstein Studios in Antrim.
Yeah.
Frankie McClay.
Yeah.
So, and we got on really well with Frankie, like who doesn't? And so went out and...
It's a very well-known studio, isn't it?
Yeah, but at the time it really wasn't, because this is 1996 or something, like,
So there wasn't, just on that behalf there too, Tony, back then, whereas now there's a lot of access to recording. I think it's important that people know that there wasn't many studios. I mean, you had Mud Wallace, and you had
we had Frankie's,
and there was another one.
There was Blast Furnace and
Blast at theirs.
There was the one. Where's the one out near Ballymena? The really swish one.
I'm not sure. I know it's in my head.
Yeah.
But that's not a lot.
Yeah.
And I suppose.
There was Clive Culbertson's outside Coleraine.
Yeah, and then Neil Calderwood outside.
Yes.
Neil's got his going, but these being ones. It's important, I suppose, for people out there to realise these are the ones up when you're talking about you're 15 years of age at this time. So then did you go then, or Blast Furnace, or did you go there?
We stayed with Einstein. Yeah. Because we were like, well, in my mind I was kind of like, well, we just worked with Frankie. He knows us.
Yeah.
So we've got rapport there. We'll get work done. Plus, he's going to look out for us.
Yeah.
He's not going to let some big bad Londoner come in and tramp all over us. He will go, hang on.
Tons.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, he's kind of like, he's going to look out for kids, like that are there.
Because that's all you were then, was kids.
I was 15, And then they would fly me back and forth to London when I was doing GCSEs and all. It was, at the time, it was amazing. Like, I'm really lucky. I'm so lucky to have had that, But then but the thing was, they were doing that with Lookage, Marty McGill's band, and they were doing it with a band called Co.uk or whatever as well. And then they ended up just going for Co.uk, and they kind of pushed Pepperbrook and Lookage to the side.
Where were they based on?
They were Belfast based. Great band, really good band, really, really good band. And calling a band Co.uk in the mid-90s was pretty ahead of its time.
There you are. If it had been a website. But at that time, you would have been, I suppose, whether you knew it or not, you were learning. You leapfrogged into another part of the industry. Do you know what I mean? And I suppose it's important for people out there that might be listening to this, Tony, as well. That's good advice. You've just said something there that you could be young and you get so close, and then it sort of evaporates. Do you want to sort of...
I would say to anybody at any age in the industry, because it's never there's never a time. You're never too old to start doing whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
You know, whatever you want to go and whatever you want to pursue, you're never too old to do that. But one thing I've definitely learned the hard way is be honest with everybody up front, you know, because not everyone's going to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
Look out for yourselves and look out for your friends and treat each other right. Talk things through. Write agreements down. Make those agreements early on. Don't stab your friends in the back.
Yeah, and I suppose what you're saying there and what you've said there is the ideal solution. But when you're young and someone swans you to England, to be honest, you just want to rock and roll. And there's an element of, you mentioned there GCSEs, like
I fluffed them totally because I was going back and forth.
And you've met, and like when I said earlier on, you're a creative facilitator. You are someone that works with Marty McGill. You mentioned Marty earlier on, and are now passing on your skills to young people for what you've learned in the industry. And a lot of people wouldn't actually know that story, you know, out there probably about yourself. And I think it's a credit to you that you know your talent is high whenever people are swanning back and forward.
Well, it's like I've been lucky to, like Shannon O'Neill from Sister Ghost was like one of the people I mentored years ago, and then Roe as well, but it was clear when those two walked in the door that they were pretty much the finished articles already.
Yeah, but I suppose it's that sort of, I think it's maybe important, them interceptions, for that sort of non-bruising effect that might happen to you going through it without any advice, if you know what I mean.
Completely. Well, I was lucky enough to get good advice in certain places, you know what I mean, but there's always going to be people out there in any walk of life that are going to try and take advantage of it.
They'll misconstrue the information you're getting. And well, that's really good. And I suppose then that kind of leads on from you were in the port, you had your skateboarding experiences. You were never going to turn professional in that, you said. But because I know, just on skateboarding behalf, I used to know people from the town that were older than me, and there was a couple of guys, and like they take some chances, like, you know, I've seen a guy go down the road flat out just to get on the back of a trailer, you know, to catch on to the trailer, and he made it and all, like, you know. But the same person was doing wheelies on the old chopper bikes, you know, small wheel, big wheel, and so maybe some people have just got that thing, they'll go for it, you know.
I have trouble walking in a straight line, so like in a skateboard, it's not going to happen.
And it is the weekend now. There's a lot of people be walking in a non-straight line. But so in 2004, you were the founding member of So I Watch You From Afar, or one of the founding members, of whatever way I want to put it. And you were the first two albums, and that would have been around the time, I suppose, like you're talking about Paperbook, it sort of dawned on me back in the era with that CD, Energy Fields with John and all. And then you're telling that story there about being the age you were. I think that's phenomenal. But you started off, how did that come about? And like, obviously there was friendships there. You grew up with people, or you mentioned earlier on Johnny and Chris, Safari, Zombie Safari Park. Because I actually think I got an EP in, and I actually think I said it to the guys that I got an EP in, and maybe I don't think they got in the festival. But that's I got a lot of things, and a lot of people seem to hit me about certain things. But it's obviously there's only so much room, and I did fast forward so many years later, redeem myself, you know, the headline slot, you know. But so no, going back to that then, the first album, and So Watch You From Afar, and then you were in the second album, Gangs. So like at that time, for the style of your band, going back to earlier on when you said about some of the inspirations you had, I suppose, like, and you were a singer as well, and all of a sudden you founded a band and you decided if there was very little singing, only maybe the wee chant, like nearly a wee mantra, like a cult mantra type thing. So how did that all come about for you? And because you would have still been the youngest, obviously.
Well, no, and so what I was second oldest.
Second oldest. You're a big boy then.
I was the one around been around the block. Johnny was the oldest at that point. Johnny was the second bass player in Pepperbook. I brought Johnny into Pepperbook, and then, like, fast forwards when Pepperbook had kind of fizzled out a little bit because other members went to uni and things like that, and just got on with their lives, you know, grew up, you know, and kind of just went. But I was still
grew up on a different path.
Yeah, some of them wanted to go to uni and pursue different things. Yeah, it's totally fine. You know, like we were kids, we were just learning. But I was like, no, I'm a lifer here. So I thought anyway. So it was just like that's what I'm doing, and then. There was a cover, like there was a couple of guys I knew in Portrush or whatever, and there was a guy called Donkey, who was the bass player, who was the bass player in Zombie Safari Park. But he was like
playing Team Fresh.
Yes,
but
he was basically saying, it was like, you should come round and jam with me and my friends, whatever. And so I remember going round, and I'd met Rory maybe twice before. I'd met because Rory and Chris had been in a band when they were young that opened for Pepperbook, like whenever we were the old people in the scene or whatever.
You were a veteran then. You were 15. You were so ancient.
Exactly.
Like, I know.
And but we had to tell them, like, the bouncers were going to kick them out of Kelly's after they played, and we were like, no, let them stay, and got them pints and all that. And so I went along, and again it was the same thing. They were a cover band, and we sang some Deftones songs and things like that, and whatever, like a Foo Fighters track or something, you know, and like then again I was like, okay, this is fun. I was like, but I'm not interested in being in a covers band. I only want to do my own material or our own material.
From the very start, Tony, you seemed to that was your goal, yeah.
Yeah, it was just kind of like, it's besides as a hack as well. It's if you mess up your own songs, nobody knows. If you mess up a cover, everybody knows. But I was just like, covers are great and they're good fun and things like that. But I enjoy creating.
So when you were creating with and so I watch you from afar, who have built an ethos, and you have that ethos. You know, you don't build an ethos just in one member of a band or two or three or four. You were there too, and so how did then you sort of? Because I'm sure the people out there listening will be interested. We're just going to be like an instrumental band, and a powerful one at that. You know what I mean? And there's no hiding from that. And so I suppose, how did you just come about then the sound, or was
Zombie Safari Park was still going, but me and Chris moved to England. Chris was going to do 3 years in Newcastle. And I was going to Liverpool for a year because the girl I was seeing at the time had moved to England and to be close to her.
Yeah.
So I moved to Liverpool and went to LIPA for a year.
That's
the Liverpool Institute of Performing Arts. McCartney's place. So I went there and
what was, just for people out there, what was that like? Because I often hear about, Paul McCartney's School of Music is all I kind of know it, and I know it's a sort of a contemporary place set up for original content and the different parts of the industry.
Well, it's kind of like, it's music, TV, film, theatre, but it's all the stuff that goes on in the background, the business of it and stuff like that, whatever. In theatre, like there'll be whole courses for people that are only doing set design and things like that, whatever, and there'll be people that are like just going down the direction route. And music,
costume design and all these things.
With music, it could be production, or it could be performance, or it could be writing, or it could be like
radio, or
whatever. Like it was an amazing place. Like it was great, but at the same time, since I can't read music, I had to do extra work to fill out my.
Your exam report, and was that?
But when I was there, that was when I first started hearing instrumental rock bands. A friend played me some stuff, and I formed an instrumental rock band over there with some friends called My Kin Variant, and that was me, guy Matt from Stoke, who still work with from time to time. Like
My Kin Variant. It sounds like it's sort of a medical.
Well, I didn't come up with a name. You can always, like a Zombie Safari Park and
like a flu or something.
Yeah,
I've got what do you call it again?
My kin, as in your kin, your brother. But My Kin Variant.
Oh, Variant. Oh, I get you. Aye.
But it was me, Matt from Stoke, Chris from Norway, and Nathan from Scotland, and we would sit up we would go to the college building and jam all night, whatever, and it was these weird.
Because everybody had jams. The one love in a place to get is to play music and get together in a room. Isn't that right, Tony?
That's it. That's what, and then I was discovering all these new. I was a completely new city, didn't know anyone, and there was just all these different influences suddenly coming in. because I'd just been. I'd lived in Belfast maybe for 6 months before that, but I'd pretty much just been in the triangle, like Portstewart, Portrush, Coleraine area my entire life.
And then, suppose, Tony, you're also coming from what is, I suppose, compared to going over to a bigger city, like a small sheltered town as such.
Oh, totally.
And, so there's going to be, you're going to see a lot of cool people wearing a lot of cool stuff, whereas, being in a certain area, you couldn't wear that, or, you couldn't wear that, but...
Well, like in Portstewart, I would have been the weirdo.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whatever, but known, so it was fine. But like in Liverpool, I was nowhere near the weirdo. Whatever, everybody could, was... Like I was the most.
You came from here. You were sitting out over there. You were normalised.
Yeah, bastards.
Till you got your first big jumper that came down over your fingers.
Just like pulled my thumbs through that part.
Just look at my groovy jumper.
But when I was there, I remember I came back and I remember saying to the guys, was kind of like, listen to this.
Yeah. What kind of bands then were?
Well, it was Explosions in the Sky, Godspeed You Black Emperor. And stuff like that. Johnny had kind of gotten into a band called Mono or whatever, like a Japanese instrumental band around a similar time. But we were going to have a Zombie Safari Park rehearsal one day and the other guys couldn't make it. And I had brought, Johnny always came along with us anyway, just to have a carry out because he was just a friend and he was just like there. And Johnny was the older one, like whatever. So
he was allowed to drink. He was 16.
Oh, at this point, Johnny was 62. Or something.
For people out there, just should say, I think the legal age of drinking is 18. Is that right?
Yes.
So what I actually had was, I can't even say.
No, at this point, we were all over 18. So it was grand.
I was going to say alcohol free, but it wasn't even invented in the last few years, so that would have been a lie. So sorry, Tony. Go ahead.
Well, Johnny been getting into that, and then I introduced these sort of bands to them and then said we should do something like this because nobody, as far as I knew, nobody was doing that.
Well, there wasn't,
in Ireland. The Redneck Manifesto were, but we didn't know about them or whatever.
But I know the
Tracer AMC in Belfast as well, but we didn't know about them because we were just on the North Coast.
Because I remember hearing them in both bands you're saying there, the demos, and I think one of them played the festival. So then you had your mix of music, and then it was, let's get down here and do the first album, and because you were influential in the first album and the second album, and so then when that would have been your first, probably, you were in, as you say, the other bands, and then you're all of a sudden, so watch you were starting from scratch. You had the whole experience of flying back and forward, so you knew a good bit, and you were at the Paul McCartney School of Music. So the business side, you would have been a bit savvy, I suppose.
Yeah, well, because we met Andrew Ferris, kind of schooled us on a little bit, things like that. And then we got a publishing deal, and the ultimate irony of the publishing deal was it was the same guy that had pursued Pepperbook, and then Andrew Ferris got in touch with him for And So Watch From Afar. And I remember being kind of like, I don't know if I want to work with this guy because he nearly destroyed me by just disappearing when I was a kid after building me up so much.
Yeah, but
I was just kind of like, I don't know if I want. But then Andrew Ferris was quite kind of going, Tony, if he's putting a cash injection into your band, you'll swallow it and kind of go there. Yeah. And besides, that's kind of, I think he felt a bit kind of like, I kind of need to make it up to this kid for what I did to when he was 15, 16. But not to say like he was obviously very into the band as well, whatever. Like, but if there hadn't been that kind of breakdown in communication between Pepperbook and BMG in the 90s, then I don't think it's what Sony ITV would have happened because it was the same guy.
So there you go. And so
always
for people out there, what would you say? Like, that old saying, goes around comes around, isn't that it? And at the end of the day, you were obviously dramatically affected. You were obviously really young, and nobody can tell what kind of effect that had on your emotional self. But this guy came back, and all of a sudden, from wherever you were there, he's back now with a golden book, this is a golden ticket. And so obviously then, just for people out there to be aware that Andrew Ferris was the founder of Small Town America, independent record label.
And
Cahir, and also one of the main people in Jet Plane Lantern, another independent band that done a lot of touring.
Oh, they laid the groundwork, definitely.
So you then took off and you built up from So Watch You, and and then obviously after the first 2 albums, you decided that you would try your own style, your own material, whatever you were going to go. So your first album was Verse, Chorus, Verse.
Yep.
And it was produced by Ian Archer, isn't that right? And it also made the shortlist for the NI Music Prize of the Year. Yeah. And how did that all feel then? You know, you were coming from, just for people out there, you were coming from a band, a unit, a band of bras, out flat out, doing the tours all over the show. And then you started Verse, Chorus, Verse, and your first album came out and it got great reviews. And so what was that like, putting that album together for yourself, and how influential was Ian Archer? I suppose people should be aware that Ian Archer was an influential songwriter with Snow Patrol, isn't that right, back in the day? And I think
big kind of Ivor Novello winning songwriter and producer.
Yeah, and was there at a few of their biggest hits. The world doesn't need to know what they are, Tony, because they probably know already. It's a bit like that alcohol drink story.
I must try some of this alcohol drink.
You're on earlier on about there with a lemon in it that we can't refer.
That zesty stuff.
Reference to back to the name. Some boy stole your name. So what was it like then working with an Ivor Novello award-winning producer, and what does that take, and what kind of level do you need to be at to approach someone like that?
Again, I was so lucky to work with someone like Ian. It was Davey Matchett who suggested it.
A gentleman.
Like from the Third Bar. Yeah. After I left the band, like and all the fallout from it and the drama from it, Davey kind of shielded me and kind of helped me continue, you know.
Did you feel a bit shell-shocked after that happened, Tony? Or were you,
it was... I didn't know it was being announced the day it was announced. Even, like, I knew it was happening, but I didn't know when it was... I was asked to prepare a statement, and I wrote a statement, and I was quite vague in it, or whatever.
That would be quite difficult, I would imagine.
It was horrible, you know, like, it was awful.
Yeah.
But so much that had preceded that was even worse. So I had to...
Well, what people need
to save myself.
And totally right. And what people need to know is that when you're with somebody 24 hours a day, and you're out there and especially in the craft of being in a band and touring and all that goes with it, the people might just see the band on the hour of the gig, and but they're not knowing about the 14 hours travel before that and trying to focus and keep focused from the night before and all the things that go with it. So I suppose it does give you, an opportunity to maybe whatever you're feeling, to get it down in your first album. Is that all right to say?
Oh, definitely.
And so where was it recorded with Ian?
It was recorded in London, but it was like Ian had this little studio that was in it was in a church, but it was the bell tower. It was where the bell used to be. It was like the bell tower, but it had been removed and then changed. But we would go up these windy stairs, and then the two of us would go in this wee door. And Ian's only like, you know, he's about the same height as me, maybe a wee bit taller. But so we'd just be like these two wee hobbits, kind of going into this wee studio door, and then just sitting.
Did you break into the Tour of London? Maybe you didn't realise.
We did, yeah. But it was great because I remember we recorded one song downstairs in the church, like whatever, and I was like, just put microphones everywhere so we can get like how the massive sound of it, things like that. But Ian was brilliant because he taught me a lot, and he made me feel so welcome, which was something I hadn't felt in such a long time musically, and he encouraged my ideas again, to have a musician telling you you're great as opposed to telling you you're worthless. You know,
he energized you again.
Yeah.
He brought back the voodoo back into you, and I suppose in a sense you would have been. Were you apprehensive putting out your first album solo on your own?
I recorded it in 2012 and it didn't come out to 2014.
Yeah.
You know?
And I suppose that for yourself, was that like anything traumatic? I suppose you had to build up your strength again. And
I was, because remember when the whole drama of leaving the band, I'd been assaulted in Vienna and stuff or whatever, and it was like there was a PTSD from that and all this stuff, and
yeah,
like I think I'm still kind of recovering.
That was your accident, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, it was like the last weekend I was a gigging member of the band.
Yeah.
Like we played Vienna, and then I got assaulted and like had a couple of broken ribs and all this, whatever. But
were you out on your own or what? I know reading about this, Tony, but just
I went out. We were all staying in a hostel, and it was a bit frosty, and I went for a walk because I felt friendlier in the streets. So I went for a walk and and then I went to a bar, and there was some people at the bar that had seen us play at the festival. So I sat and I was just like, and like they were really friendly, and just sat and had some drinks with them. Then I was walking home, and I got the shit kicked out of me by these two guys and 2 broken ribs. And
did they just come out of nowhere or what?
No, they were bouncers at a bar, but they were a bar I hadn't been in. It was the weirdest thing. I like I have to hold my hands up as well. Like I have this thing. If I've had a couple of drinks, I would tend to like sing to whatever I was listening to in my headphones, or whatever, whatever, and not even think about it. But so I was doing it, and I kind of was like walking down the street, and it was about 11 o'clock on a Saturday night, and but everybody in the bar, we were all enjoying. People were high-fiving me as I was going by. I was going, yeah, and then I looked across at these bunchers across the road, and they were shouting something at me, and I was like, I took off my headphones, and I was like, what? And they're like, shut up, and everyone, and I just kind of went and flipped the guy the finger, or whatever, and just like walked on. Next thing I know, I went flying into the window because the buncher ran over and punched me, and then he went back over, and everyone was like, are you okay? Are you okay? I was just like, yeah. But since I was a wee bit drunk, I should have known better, but I took out my phone and went, I'm calling the police. That's assault. I'm phoning the police. I shouldn't have done that, because then the 2 of them just chased me, and they were like, run. So I just like legged it down it was like something of a film. It was run down the back streets of Vienna. I ran so fast, Paddy, my shoes came off.
I thought you were going to say your shoes became on fire.
I ran so fast, I ran back in time.
Did you quantum leap back to Port Rush in the middle of it?
Suddenly back to go, okay, Tony, you in a few years someone's going to tell you to go to Vienna. Don't go.
And I'm sure you had some, like, I know you've, like, there's that experience and all, which is brutal, but I'm sure you had some good tours. You had some, like, where would have been sort of, I suppose, and the So Watch You from far days, where would have been your best gig, or what would have been the most exciting gig you would have done? Or
that year that I left started off pretty well. We were in Russia, and that was amazing. Like, that was for the 2.5 weeks that we were in Russia, I think was probably the closest we ever were as a band, because we only had ourselves and we couldn't really chat. Other people could speak English and things like that, but we were still very much like, this is a total culture shock.
Yeah.
And
how was the audiences out there? You know, some people say that certain European audiences, they just stare you and then they give you the deadliest round of applause at the end.
Sometimes that can happen, yeah. But
is that a strange phenomenon, do you think? You know, over here people just get into it and get, sweated up and jump about and all that there. I'm sure there's our countries it happens, but it's just some artists would say that certain places they're just down staring at you, but they're really into it.
No, definitely. I found that kind of in Germany a bit, but not at festivals, but like club dates. But then again, the original kind of and So Watch You gigs and things like that, most people did kind of look at us kind of like going, what is happening here? Because the songs were so long, and there was 4 guys going bananas on stage, which wasn't the thing bands always did.
Yeah.
Like,
you get an individual, like the singer jumping on the monitor and all, but you could have jumped off the stage at any time too.
The 4 of us kind of going, it was something that in Pepperbook I'd encouraged or whatever. I remember going on tour with Clearshot, which was like fighting with wire, pre-fighting with wire, and I remember to kind of like, they were pretty energetic, but then after we toured with them, next time I saw them, they were going way nuts, and it was like, like Cahir will probably deny it completely, whatever. But that's kind of.
He has a habit of standing still, hasn't he, Cahir?
He did.
And so, like, but playing them places, for yourself, like, and coming from a small town on the north coast, it must be amazing to go around and have them different audiences to play to. And you had, as I say, you've then, with your your VerseChorusVerse album came out, and what was the plans there then? And I know you seem to be out all over the place, and there seemed to be a lot of shows, like you were on different.
Kind of just kept going because
Yeah.
I don't know really how to do anything else.
Yeah.
Like there's everything about this. I know lots of little avenues. Like I can record, or like I can route a tour and all those things, whatever. But the performance and the performance and the creation of music is the fun part.
Yeah.
Whatever. So like, and I just kind of was like, I remember one of the first shows I did after I left the band was in the Roisin Dove in Galway.
Yeah, that's a real cool venue.
Great place.
Yeah.
And I was opening up for a guy called John Vanderslice, who like was, he used to produce like Neutral Milk Hotel and all these kind of like very cool guy. But I was going to play that, and I remember I was bricking it because it was kind of just.
Because there's always a crowd in that bar.
Well, I was breaking it because I was kind of going, what have I've walked away from this thing that I've built over the past 5 years. I've been kind of like, I've walked away, kind of pushed away from this thing that I've built over all these years. And now everybody knows me as this guitar player that goes nuts in an instrumental band.
Yeah.
And now I'm like with an acoustic guitar singing these
more
songs.
subdued.
Yeah, and kind of like, there's nothing to hide to get behind. There's nothing there's no big light show. There's no big energetic thing. There's not an assault of the senses. It's the only thing.
40 pedals.
Yeah. It's just the songs.
Yeah.
That's it, and your voice. That's it. And it's kind of daunting, but I was determined because that's how it started. That was like when my mum had taught me how to play Leaving on a Zeppelin. That was.
You sort of went full circle.
Yeah. I kind of went back like to that. I remember I was going past Roisin Dove. There was this big queue outside, and I was like, "There's a queue here," which there would have been if I had been in So What You Get. And I was like, "Everything's gonna be okay. Everything's gonna be okay." And like I was amazed. And then like I was walking up like past the crowd and was like, not one person's kind of been like going, "Oh, there's Tony." And so like it was like my ego taking a battering. It serves me right. And
do you think a lot of people were expecting you to come out like
this? Is the thing. I thought they were all there for me. Turns out Tommy Tiernan was doing a secret set. So they were all queued up for Tommy Tiernan. And I remember just that, like bizarrely after that, when I figured that out, I was like, all right, okay. I remember standing in the bar, and I was like, Spurs were playing the Shamrock Rovers or whatever, like an Irish team, whatever. So I was kind of like half watching that before it played, and I just heard this voice saying, "What's the score?" And I turned around, it was Tommy Tiernan, and So What You From Afar had done a chat show with him.
There you go.
So I turned around and he was like, "It's yourself." Like he didn't know who it was, but he recognized me, like for whatever. But I was like, "Oh, Tommy!" Like, and I was wearing this stupid deerstalker hat sort of thing, and he was like, "Oh, so are you here with the lads?" I was like, "Oh no, sorry for the terrible accent." I was like, "Oh no, actually, like I'm not with the band anymore." And he went, "Oh, and are you awfully sad?" and I was like, "A wee bit sad, but why do you ask?" And he was like, "So you're wearing a very sad man's hat." Bye! And then just walked off.
And look, even being up for the nomination in the NA Music Prize, did that feel good then too with the first album?
Everything felt so numb for years, Paddy, I'll be honest.
Aye.
I was scared to go to it in case I'd run into my old bandmates and things. Like it was like Belfast became scary for me because it just seemed like I was just in the shadow of this huge big triangle.
Yeah. But the thing was, you were an influential part of that triangle, and you should never think that you're not.
I never have done, but I've been made to feel like I'm not. I've been made to feel excluded from my own history. Things, which isn't pleasant.
I know. Well, that's where, I suppose, you had a book out. People should know when I say earlier on you're a writer. There's two names for it. I'll take the respectable one, right? Because I can't say the other one because it sounds offensive to say back to you in the podcast. So the book was called Verse, Chorus, Verse.
Chapter in Verse, Chorus, Verse.
Chapter in Verse, Chorus, Verse. And if you didn't like that title, you could call it
Another Decade on the Road.
Another Decade on the Road. And so that was a book that had to looked at your insight from yourself from being young. And how did the idea of that come about? You know, to actually, you know, like people say about writing books that they write. Maybe some people write a memoir when they're whatever age, but you were straight out there. Did that help you get a lot off your chest?
Kind of. It didn't, but it wasn't why I was doing it.
No.
I was kind of doing it. I did it initially to try and sort things out in my own head. There was no kind of like, I'm going to write a book and publish it. That wasn't the plan.
Yeah.
But then...
It was more a self-healing journey type for you then?
Yeah, it was kind of like, it was therapy for me in a way, you know, kind of like going, think about things. Because only a little bit of the book is kind of history. Yeah. The majority of the book is about this strange trip that I took in America where I started... It was like an early midlife crisis or something, but it was me piecing together these strange journeys that I'd taken throughout my life that had now led me to this place. And then this strange line of coincidence that happened from my first day in America that lasted to the last day, 5 weeks later, you know, whatever.
Yeah. And so I suppose for people out there, do you want to tell a wee nugget or anything about and I should say to people out there that the book's still online.
Unfortunately, I've taken it off for the meantime while I have to change some things in it.
Unfortunately, the book is not online at the minute. It's offline. I tell you what, the book is the book's drying out on a line at the minute as we speak, because that's the way you do it, people. Well, you know, before there was all these fancy printers and all drying things out, you used to hang the book off the line, and the book dried out. You know,
that's how it works.
And that's how it works. So at the minute, it's not online, it is on the line.
On the line.
All right, just so people know the difference, all right? And once it comes off the line, we will be the first, Tony, won't we, to speak and say that it's off the line now, it's dried up.
Yes.
And it's back out there.
It's back there.
Beautiful. And and that was a time of touring and all too. So what, like in America, obviously you go from... you know, small town, you mentioned to Belfast there, and you go to the School of Music in Liverpool with Paul McCartney, and then you land in the grand old US of A. And I'm aware that you've went, as with So Watching From Far and with the Nashville songwriters, you were part of that.
Well, I didn't go with Nashville songwriters, but I went to Nashville, and I didn't... Nashville was strange, because like, it's an amazing place, but I think I've always felt... I think most people do to a certain extent, but I've always felt kind of like an outsider or whatever, like, and that's kind of with any of the art I've created, I've always tried to do it for the outsider, because you write about what you know, and that's what I know, and that's what I've always felt like. People's champion is what you're. I am the rock. And what was, you know, because as you say it there, you know, sometimes when you hear Nashville, you just think cowboy boots and big fancy hats, you know. But it's the thing, like, I remember I know it's not that, you know, but it's kind of like, to me, it felt like Disneyland for music, and that could be a good and a bad thing. Yeah, you know, whatever. Like, it's the hub where all happens, and there's so much amazing music, and there's so much incredible country music. There's so much dreadful country music, like the commercial pop stuff. Yeah, it's so bad, but there's so much great country music where it's really soulful and it means something, you know. Yeah, it's not that sort of produced, polished stuff you're saying. Yeah, I kind of feel like. You mean like John Prine and people? Yeah, like all that stuff. Johnny Cash and that sort of... and then some like more modern ones like John Fulbright and people like that, you know. And just like I went to when I was in America, basically my music publishers had sent me to New York, to Nashville, and to LA to speak to the people in the offices of the music publishers there to try and take my career on to the next step, all that nonsense, you know. How did that go? You know, was not great, but in New York it was great, and then in Nashville, you just like I remember whenever I was in New York, the office was just beside Times Square, and it was like, you know, on the my God, hi Tony, welcome Tony, 7th floor. But they were really like, I was kind of like, this is bullshit, but they were really cool and really kind of really friendly. They came and saw me in the gig, and they were really supportive. In Nashville, they were kind of supportive, but they were like, I was like, here's my album and here's some EPs, and here's like 15 songs that I'm going to put for the next album. And they were like, is that it? And I was like, yeah. And they were kind of like, the taxi driver that brought you over here today probably had 100 songs in his glove compartment. No and I was way. Like, yeah, but I'm signed with you guys. And they were like, yeah, but like, is this going to fit in here or whatever? And they were just being honest. But that's someone's personal opinion, really. It's not an overall. With Nashville, they were just kind of like, they were going for the commercial country hit.
Yeah.
They invited me to a pitch night or whatever, not to play, but it was an open mic, and there was like, they would have representatives from Warner, one from Universal, and one from Cobalt, and one from someone else.
Yeah.
You know, and they would kind of go through it. So I was sitting just watching, and everybody that came up, you know, there was nothing new about anything they were doing. They were all ticking the boxes. The guy got up and sang a song about drinking beers and then being in his pickup with his buddies, and the girl sang like a song about, you know, like about her getting back up after a broken heart and this kind of stuff. You know, and I was just kind of going, like, there's nothing really here kind of new, you know. And the thing was, and it was an industry event. None of the industry people were paying any attention. And then the song would stop and they would all turn around and be like, oh, amazing. And then they would turn back to just chat. Like, I think I was the one person in the audience actually listening. And at that point, it was.
Do you think it was just a free laddie-da, maybe just?
Kind of, yeah. Like, and then I got to California and it was great. I played, like, I ended up doing some shows with Gogo Bordello and things like that. And
Brilliant.
It was great. It was fantastic, you know. And then, but I remember like like going to my publishers. Like I met one of my A&R person, like in a coffee shop. I was chatting to her for
That's
a bit.
Paul Clegg's band, Gogo Bordello.
Was.
He was their tour manager, wasn't he?
He was one of their managers.
There you
know,
go.
whatever. Like it was Paul that got me on the shows.
Brilliant.
You know, but yeah. So then it was. Then after that, I was in California. I was chatting to this lady, or whatever, and she was like, "Okay, we should bring you up and meet the team." I was like, "Cool." So she brought me up to the Cobalt offices in LA, and then we were doing. It was like a Jedi mind trick. It was amazing. We went into this room with a big oval table, and there was all these people sitting around the table, and she was like, "This is Tom. He's head of Sync, and this is Denise.
Hi,
Denise is head of." And they're all like, "Hi." And she walks me around, and then we get to the door, and she's just like, "So yeah, you know where we are now. So anytime you're in LA, just like come back, and that's great, thanks." And I was like, "Okay, thanks." And I was halfway down the corridor, and I was like, "What just happened there?" That was amazing. She just kicked me out.
Did they just go
like amazing?
Do you think it's just in one door and kick you out?
Yeah,
I don't wonder how many people they do that to in a day.
You know, but it was just kind of like going, "Oh, that's the music industry."
But the experience was good, and
it was brilliant.
And like, you know, because if you look at it, you have a lot of opportunities within all that there. And
I had the time of
you
my
know,
life.
and you were out at SX Southwest
with the band, yeah.
And is that somewhere you would think of going back out to, or
I think
or
so.
is the commercialism of a tin away from? See, everybody's going to go to an event, Tony, and say, "Oh, it was better 10 years ago. Oh, it was better last year." And like, that's just your opinion.
Of course.
The event's still there. You know, it's like festivals, isn't it? In a way, you know.
I think it's worth going if you have a good bit. If you're already, you know, kind of gathering a bit of momentum, and you're going over there and you're one of the hype bands that people are like, "Oh, we got to go see them." If you're going over there kind of blindly, I don't think it's
an expensive flop.
Yeah.
So
I think a lot of kind of acts have done that without putting in the groundwork for 3-4 years before making that leap.
Before they even come.
Yeah.
So Say and Do was a collaboration with David Little. Mm-hmm. And it reached number 21 in the UK charts, and was number 1 in the blues charts.
Yeah.
And I'm aware that was that around the same time, Tony, as you were the resident artist in the MAC? Or
no,
David was in the Nerve Centre.
David was in the Nerve Centre.
So just explain to people how that all came about.
David Little, amazing jazz musician, producer, multi-instrumentalist, just all round legend, really. And I'd never met David before, but I was in the Nerve Centre, and Marty McGill had kind of just mentioned their new musician in residence, David Little, and I'd heard his name.
Was that around the City of Culture time? Was it?
What about no? It was 2015.
2015.
2015.
Aye.
And then, and basically he just said he was like, "Oh, you want to hear this guy play the drums? He makes the drums sing." And I remember looking at Marty, kind of going, "Right, okay," kind of going, "He may be a good drummer. He doesn't make the drums sing. Drum's a percussive instrument. You can't make the drums sing." And then I met the guy and heard him play, and I was like, "This guy makes the drums sing." It was amazing, and we got on really well. And then I pitched to him recording some of my songs that I'd kind of almost forgotten about. They just
went right for you then.
Yeah, I kind of just was like, oh, should we record this? But we'll just do it live, you know. So we went in, we recorded it live. He heard the songs for the first time that day. We just went in, set up 2 microphones, one for me and guitar and vocals, one for him and the drums, and just hashed it out. And then, again, put it out with no fanfare, didn't alert media beforehand. We just one day were like, we recorded an album, here it is, and put it out. And wouldn't you know, it was the most successful album that I've done.
Something that you just thought would have just really just not...
just disappeared,
but people obviously caught on, and because I heard some of the tunes on it, and I suppose there you are then, leaving from, you know, your early days in Paperback So What You, and then you're coming into what is it essentially a man that does read music, I would imagine.
David, David's a doctor of music.
Yeah, there you go. And but yet it didn't hold you back in a sense, that working along with somebody like that. So it's showing that, you know, it can be done for people out there, just if they are listening. Exactly. That you can, you know, and that's, I'm sure, Tony, that's a lot to do with the artists at the RSA not being aloof in a sense.
Completely.
To that and understanding, you know, that. So when you work together, you didn't do as much, you know, like big touring as you would think of doing. Or you just
we did like 5 shows. Maybe.
Yeah. And how did they all go? And because
they were great. They were strange. Like we did the Empire in Belfast, which was great. We did a couple in Derry, which were great, and we did DeBarra's down in Clonakilty, old Noel Redding's place. Like, and it was great, but there was very few people there. But that's kind of what made it great, because we literally were chatting to the audience between songs and things like that. And we did, where else did we do? We do a North Coast one. I can't remember now. But we only did like about 5 or 6 shows. And then David was then artist in residence in the Mac.
Yeah.
And we did one of the shows. And then that's where the full circle thing comes in, because I ended up artist in residence in the Mac, releasing my book. But the first page of my book is David talking about me in the Mac,
there or whatever,
when he was artist in residence.
So people out there know that you know, artists in residence just don't come out of fresh air. You know, anybody that's an artist in residence is capable and has a capacity to work with different levels of people, and has a capacity to bring new things within where they're based. And through what you'd achieved, the Arts Council of Northern Ireland had recognised what you were doing, and obviously the MAC had recognised it. And I suppose for someone, yet again, coming from where you had come from, and this iconic, as to say, massive arts centre as such, the biggest in Northern Ireland, and I suppose the most diverse of activities have been on. So what kind of, just for people out there, an artist in residence, I suppose you could think it's like someone sitting in a wee cupboard somewhere, and then like they're like, you know, oh, hail the man behind the cupboard, you know what I mean? And you know,
all hail Oz.
All hail Oz. You could pop out, hi mate, yeah, let's drum a bit. So inside as the artist in residence, for what happens there, Tony, for someone like yourself that's an artist in residence, and what is it? You know, I know I read at times of people artists in residence collaborate and things. So what was your year like?
Like anybody, like I think like it's what you make of it. And at that point, whenever I was going in, I used it to develop the stage show that I turned the book into, whereby there was me doing sort of theatrical readings from the book, but tied in with songs from my own back catalogue that kind of like linked it thematically. Yeah,
we've seen it in the Tahini Centre.
Yeah,
it's really
that's
good.
Right, yeah.
That was a different concept altogether.
Completely.
That was different.
And it was, I was putting that together, going for it, but then also just doing my own little bits of writing and recording and things like that. But because I put out, this was the weird thing, to finance the book, I put out my 3rd album, Outro, which was the one that basically paid for the pressing of the book and things like that, whatever. And it was kind of a crowdsourcing thing. Like when I brought it out, I said everyone was kind of going, if you buy my album, if you buy this album, if you like it, the money is going direct to me printing this book or whatever. That's how it's going to happen.
But that showed you the love people had for you. They supported you in that campaign.
It was beautiful, yeah. It's beautiful. I sometimes feel I don't like asking audiences for things or whatever. But sometimes the audience do like to be asked or whatever. Whatever, because it's a two-way thing.
Yeah, look, I understand that, and I've been in that situation, asking people for things, as you know, when here in sport.
I don't mind asking anyone for a favour, but I was asking someone for
and it's amazing then when you make the ask that you might have someone at our end saying, sure, that's no bother. You could have just rang me about that, and you maybe built your hope. You built yourself all up, tense and all going. You're like a Father Dougal moment. Attack of no, and you need a big towel for the forehead. But look, you put it out there, and people supported it, and that alone sometimes can lift your energy. And I know that for yourself that. You have, I suppose, like anybody, everybody has something to live with and something to put up with, and it's how they adapt to it. Like anything in life, some things can give us a bad kicking and throw us back down, but when we get up again, it might not disappear that wee key, but at least we know that at the other end, there's good people, as I always say. And
I've been continually blown away over 25 years since I've been doing this, really. Jesus, coming up to 26. Well, that's a good thing. If it stopped at 25.
You look well for 25,
Thanks very much.
I don't mention it there. Like, the last 10 years since you were 15 and flying back and forward to England now,
I did mention the time travel earlier, though.
And it wouldn't be too good now if it happened, to be honest, what's going on. You wouldn't even get a bloody plane. It would probably,
your time travel is like, don't go to 2020, whatever you do. Just skip that.
One or 10 journeys would be your album deal. It would be £10,000 there just to go to Gatwick.
I've always been blown away with the kindness of strangers. I think that's a line from Streetcar Named Desire, but it's true. I've always kind of been blown away.
The interception of good people and that have good heart, and
but you have to be very careful as well not to take advantage of that as well. Because there's some people don't know when to say no as well. So it's.
Well, I suppose it's like.
But most people want to help. I truly believe that.
No, there's as many great energies out there as there is negatives. But at the end of the day, sometimes the opposite can kick us, and then we get back into the other opposite of it, which is positivity, the negativity, and we use the positive one. So you went on then, Tony, and your album Folk's Ache and the Tragedy of Dr. Hannigan, and that's not for Folk's sake, right? For anybody out there thinking that we're having this big journal of cursing,
It's Guy Fawkes.
Or would you ever Fawkes off? Aye, that's it.
It's spelt as in like Guy Fawkes.
It is, surely. Well, I'm sorry that I have an old sort of dyslexic tongue on me there.
This is exactly why we called it that.
Imagine trying to say that after 10 pints.
It's just to hear the English DJs kind of going, that was the Tragedy of Dr. Hannigan with a new album, Folk's sake.
Come on in, buy the album for fuck's sake. No, that was 2017. Because at this stage, even from your early days with So a Watcher, you're prolific. You don't mess around too long. Like it's every couple of years you're putting some new content out. And when I say every couple of years, I mean albums. I'm not saying about EPs in between that and maybe working on charity songs for different things with people. So the whole Dr. Hannigan thing, because I remember at the time going to you, oh lad, that's lethal. Remember? And
we were trying to get something happening.
And I know it didn't work out, which is grand. But I know I was talking to someone earlier on. I was saying that I had you in for a chat, and they mentioned the Dr. Hannigan.
Did they? Cool.
Just to and everything else, but they just wanted to. Will there be any more working with Dr. Hannigan, or who was it, and who recorded it?
Well, you see, Dean Stevens deserves a big, like it wouldn't happen without Dean. Dean got in touch with me to do some collaborating, and we were going to do some sort of like Nashville style songs and just try and farm them out. But then when we just had fun jamming things out, and we did a similar thing whereby the only song that was written before we got in the studio would have been Hey Little Worried One, the kind of first one, and it's just a chorus repeated 5 times pretty much, but that was like the only one that was pretty meditated. The rest we just made up each day as we came in.
Because do you know your gig up at Stendhal, was that Doctor?
That was Dr. Hannigan.
Because remember I got a wee picture of you were hanging out at the
That's right, yeah.
I'm not a grave dog, but I seen you hanging out. I'm always watching from around weird abstract things like people, doing magic. So there you go. And really good set and a great crowd.
It was brilliant.
And and you were right on among them, Tony, and given the whole and I suppose with like earlier,
it was a character thing. I kind of just like
Well, you done it great, and that's what it's all about, I suppose. Like you said earlier on about performing as a unit and giving it all, and everybody out there and doing it. Like certainly that day, you took the character of Dr. Hannigan, whoever it was, and it went down really well, and there was a good crowd. And did that surprise you, that the amount of people? Because obviously they were there for. You're someone now as a linear line with So I Watch You and VerseChorusVerse, Dr. Hannigan, and so who recorded it, or was it something?
Dean is a very talented man, and encourage anybody that wants to work with an amazing multi-instrumentalist producer. Dean Stevens is the guy to speak to.
Where is Dean from then, Tony, for people listening?
I'm not sure if he's from Belfast originally, but he's got a studio just outside Hollywood, out around there. Well,
he loves us people bombarding him now.
Oh, I'm delighted. Like that guy loves working. He loves working.
So Dean
Stevens.
Dean Stevens, for people out there.
Yep.
And is he on Facebook or things?
Yeah, I can't remember the name of his new studio because it was a different studio when we recorded. But it's outside Hollywood, and it's great. It's
that's
amazing.
Hollywood, County Down, people. Yeah. Just in case there's some guy sitting outside Cookstown going, I'll tell you what, that Tony boy must have sung Cash shooting out to Hollywood. So just to put it on record, it's Hollywood, County Down, and is the big sign in Hollywood, County Down, like in the walls? There is. It's called the Mourns. So
Dean had a lot, and he was. But it was just a fun thing to kind of do, and it was that character thing, because if you're a character, you can say things that you would never have the balls to say when you're not doing it. And
I should say too, your book was named as one of the books of the year for the Irish Times in 2019. Which is, you're a rock and roller, and you're being among the, yes, perfect, yes, fancy words from young Tony. I walked down the street in LA, and and so it's a world where you see a lot of thespians and all, and that's their thing, writing books. But you went down there, and all of a sudden you have. Well, one of the biggest papers out there, the Irish Times, writing that it was good. And how did that make you feel? Yeah, and I know I've got piles of quotes I could make about different people and says, but that one there, I thought sat out about.
That was like when I saw that. It was. I think it was like just before Christmas that I saw that as well, because it was they were roundup of the year, and they were just like, this was one of the Irish music books of the year. And let's face it, like as an island, we do put out a lot of music books. It's
a home, they say, of literature, and you think of the poet laureates. There's a good few in Ireland. I don't need to name them because everybody knows who they are.
Well, I've always been a big fan of. I've always been a reader, and I love disappearing into books and things like that. And
what kind of books do you like reading then?
It's only in the past sort of like 6-7 years I've got into fiction. I just always loved memoirs and biographies and travel books and things like that. And then it was like, I enjoyed fiction when I was very young, but then when I was a teenager and in my 20s and starting my 30s, it was like, but it's only halfway through my 30s again, I was just like, no, fiction's great. Hey, this might catch on, this fiction stuff.
But at what stage did you think, wee bubble in your head going, I'm going to write a book,
When you're a solo musician, you spend a lot of time by yourself.
Yeah,
as everybody's been used to this past year.
Yeah.
As a solo musician,
how's that been for you too this year as well? It's
tough, really tough. But I recorded an album, so I got that out of it. But I think everybody's had a tough year, and we've all got to know our limits a lot better, and what works for us and what doesn't, and it's been an education. Maybe in a way I was better equipped for it than others because I had been by myself for so long. But I think I had been, because before the pandemic, I this is a real first world problem, but I was in Italy for a few months before that, but I was by myself in a wee mountain village. So I was by myself for months before the lockdown. And,
how did you end up there?
I ran away, Paddy. I ran away.
You ran away just for a week. Was it just a week to find yourself again?
Yeah, like I'd lost a friend.
Yeah,
and it was weird because it was this great songwriter, Robert Holmes, that I've been working with, and he was the most gifted songwriter.
I seen you put up a wee bit. I seen that online.
And I'd been working with Robert to try. Like the plan was to get his confidence back up, to get him out playing, and then I was going to record an album with and it was like we were going to do it properly, and the songs were amazing. And then we would always meet up and go over songs, but it was also like therapy for both of us because we were like chatting about things. And Robert was a wee bit older than me, and then when the run up to my book launch, I was just super busy and I didn't speak to Robert for a while. And I remember kind of going, as soon as the book launch is done, I'll give Robert a shout, see how he's doing. As soon as the book launch is done, get that done because I just have to focus on this. And then the day of my book launch, Robert disappeared. And the day after my book launch, I started seeing missing notices, and I was like, oh God. And then he was found, a few days later, and it just pulverized me because I kept just thinking, why didn't I know that it would have happened regardless if I had called him or not. But I did blame myself for it, and I've lost a lot of friends that way, and most of them are musicians.
Yeah.
And I just went, shit, that's the path I'm on. I just ran away because I was like, if that's the fate that's going to happen to me, or whatever.
Mental health, Tony, mental health, friend, is something that is very, very much out there now on an even bigger scale, and like there's a lot of. You see a lot of people out there now. It's all right not to feel all right. When we talked earlier on, you get a buzz and then you get a kick and a buzz, and we had a wee cup of tea. We talked about that. But I suppose when we analyse things a lot, we, I suppose, keep our mind lets us think we should have thought like us.
Yeah.
Whereas actually, the amount of good times you spent together.
Oh yeah.
And laughs was probably very much an energizer to both ends, as you say. And like the only way, I suppose, on that there is that you remember the good times.
Yeah.
And you remember the smiling, like you're smiling now. And he seemed to be a beautiful person, what you're describing there. And there's nothing wrong with being like getting really upset about something.
Yeah.
And you took the journey to Italy to try and...
I just disappeared. I just was like, I need to get out of here. There was a lot of things happening. There was a big anniversary and things at the time of like the first So Watch You album that year and things, and I just seemed to be surrounded by that again. And there was stuff happening there, and then I wasn't getting... I kind of felt like songs I wrote and I wasn't getting. It was a really awful time for me to personally, like 2009, the start of 2019, and then all these things happening, and I just had to run away. I just knew the battering my mental health had taken recently, but then it brought everything from 10 years
to the
back
fore.
To the fore again. It just kicked up all the dirt, and I had to get out of it. So I skipped and went, like, I'm lucky that I was able to do that, I'm lucky I was able to like go and hide away in Italy for a few months.
But you have Italian connections.
Yeah.
I mentioned earlier on ice cream and you were saying how does that connection happen? How did that connection...
Oh, my nonna, like she met my grandfather in Naples. He was an Irish soldier, like whatever, and they came over and they got married and all that, whatever. So yeah, it's just like there's a very large Irish Italian community, There's a very large Scottish Italian community and a very large English and Welsh Italian community, and they all come from the same region in Italy, pretty much.
And that's all over the UK and here. And
yeah, because they're I was there for like 4 or 5 months, 2019, and there would be like a month where there's just all these Scots arrive.
Wow. So were you staying with your relatives out there?
No, because my nonna used to live there, but she's passed away long ago. And then like my dad and his partner had a place there or whatever, like, and I just kind of went and stayed there. And
did that help you reflect?
I thought it did, yeah. Well, like I recorded an audiobook while I was out there.
Yeah.
So it was the stupidest thing in the world, because I just, rather than getting away from the trauma, I was just rereading the trauma. But in a way, it was kind of like, it was something to keep me focused.
But once you put it on the book, it was gone from your insides.
Felt like it was just kind of like going, oh, well, that's a bit of purging. It's kind of like out there. And it's just out. Yeah. So,
and I suppose then, as you say, you had that to deal with. Your friend got arrested and passing away, and then you came home, and then it was lockdown.
Oh yeah, I came back. When I was coming back, I went via Glasgow, where my brother lives just outside with his family, and I kind of just was like, I saw how big my niece and nephew had gotten, and I was like, I need to spend some time with these ones. So I decided to move to Glasgow. I moved to Glasgow, and then shortly after, pandemic. But they don't live in Glasgow. They live outside Glasgow, so they weren't within walking distance.
So were you thinking of sort of moving away to live somewhere else from here now,
There
Tony?
was a part of me that just wanted to get away from.
Maybe it's just a new beginning.
Yeah, it felt like that.
Yeah.
And I just wanted, I wanted somewhere where the first thing. I was a bit of a dickhead about it. Like, I wanted to go somewhere where the first thing people talked to me about wasn't, and so I watch you from afar. You know what I mean?
At least you go out there and talk about like croissants and fancy meals.
But that's not to say
how many ways can you cook spaghetti, Tony? Go on, the clock's on now.
If you get a bottle like this, whatever, make sure that you get like a metal bottle. Set it on top of an upturned iron.
And
then put some spaghetti in there. Or you can go for a really long one. Just get some water there and just like with a hairdryer.
Sounds good. So can you hairdryer spaghetti to cook? Aye.
Why not?
Aye, let's do it. Like, I mean, look, see out in the world there's room for everything and anything. And
but I just also want to say that's like I'm quite happy to talk about my past, but at that point I was kind of like I was just fed up with it, But I'm quite because at that point it was kind of like I felt like my past had been robbed from me in a certain way, but then. It was blatantly obvious to me that then with reflection that it wasn't, because people were talking to me about it.
So once you get a different perspective, the sort of hurt maybe eased up a bit, and you were able to continue on, which is really important.
Yeah.
So your next album, third solo album, Outro, you mentioned earlier on there. So that was the album that financed
the book. Yeah.
The book, and it got great reviews as well. And out there, you always seem to get good reviews, and down south as well, which a lot of artists up here wouldn't get as much maybe coverage as I'm lucky. I definitely get a bit of grace because of my past, and that's really good. And you have 3 EPs out and singles. There was an interesting thing I was reading about you about the actor in you. I don't know if actoring is actually a word, but it is now. And Tony, welcome to our actoring class.
Inside the actor studio.
Inside the actoring class, right? A very famous self-motivation EP out there now. So the story was about a guy who was an ex-German soldier. Who then came
Troutman, Bert Troutman.
And how did that come about? How did you end up in something like that? Just tell people what it's about. It's a strange story.
I ended up as like I have the very small speaking role in a motion picture.
Did you have to speak like German?
Well, they auditioned me for 2 parts. One was Ice Cream Man, which I thought was perfect irony. Because
you are the king of Knickerbocker Glories.
Exactly. Because I came my nonna and the Morellis and all that kind of stuff. So the Ice Cream Man, so it made sense. But they also asked me to do it was like a reporter as well, and it was like based around Manchester. Good. Well, that's where the
Bert Truman is not the name.
Bert Troutman.
Troutman,
yeah. And it was the true story of this German paratrooper that was a prisoner of war in England, and then the war ended and he repatriated to England or whatever because he fell in love with this girl and he started playing for the local football team. But he was actually a really good goalkeeper and Manchester City signed him. But when people found out that he had this history as a German paratrooper, they were obviously quite, and like there was lots of protests and all this and people didn't like him. But then they were in an FA Cup final and 5 minutes into the game he broke his neck.
Yeah, that's totally fascinating.
Yeah, but he played the rest of the game because they didn't know he'd broken his neck. There was like a bit of vertebrae that had lodged in and it was keeping him alive. But he made all these amazing saves during the game that if he hadn't touched his head, like he would have died. And they only found this out after the game.
Wow.
So after that, he was this big hero. Everyone was like, and he got this like German Anglo relations medal and all this was used as this kind of totem to repair the relations between the two countries.
He was a peace deal.
Yeah. So while he's recovering in hospital. And he's on the phone to his wife. This is terrible. This is a spoiler, by the way. I'm sorry. Like, should I keep going?
Well, it's if it depends. Like, it could be people might want to watch it. I'm not sure.
I'll just leave it.
But you've come that far. Like I tell you,
okay. Well, if you
do you know
want
a
to
lot
watch
of them interviews? See, if you were an actor now, you know the way you'd be interviewed and all. You walk around the film and all, and this and that and that. I'd love if somebody just come on and go, "Yep." He gets it hard at the end. He's well, my character, you can sense a wee bit of this and a wee bit of that. So, but look,
I guess if you want to watch the film, skip the next minute or 30 seconds.
Yeah.
So what happens pretty much, his little son goes out to get an ice cream, and I'm sitting reading the newspaper, and his son comes out, and I recognize him, and I'm just like, oh, your dad's an hero, son. Your dad's a hero, and. He puts his money down like, this is on the the money's no good here. And but
do you know what? You sound like a Yorkshire man.
That's because it's Manchester, so I went for that area.
Delhi, you done good. No, you done good there. You done good there.
And because when I did the
Manchester,
I did a Scouse one or whatever. I was going, so you're telling me, like, but it was but so that like the kid leaves his money and walks off, and I see it, and I'm like, oh son, you don't have to pay. I got hit by a car.
Oh my God!
And killed.
So
because he turns around like while I'm shouting after him for his money, so that, and then the mum comes out and she's like in hysterics. I'm trying to, but the actress, she was amazing. Freya Mavor, I think she was in Skins. Like the director's like, when she comes out, you pick her up and try and calm her down. She just clean elbowed me in the face.
Did
I just had to keep going with it.
Well, you just put her son out in the road and got knocked down.
To be fair, yeah.
So, to be fair,
I deserved it.
Well, so that was a great experience. So now,
but the main thing with the acting thing was the also rans.
But that's what I'm going to get to now. So Mickey McCullough, and yourself, just for the world people out there. So
and Colin Laverty.
So the also rans good people is all online. Mm-hmm. So do you want to give them a wee insight into what? Right, I'll say it first. Mickey McCullough at the minute is a songwriter, and he's also a podcast king. Mm-hmm. Him and Nathan Reagan. So in lockdown they started doing podcasts, and
they were doing them since 2017.
There you are, and by all accounts they're really successful at it. And so. Tell me, because I remember at the time seeing the one where you came in the flat and all, and you were all flustered and what was going on. And, so basically, for what I thought it was two guys about to release some music, but they were kind of not really that, and they were,
we're playing kind of exaggerated versions of ourselves. Like I'm called Tony in it, and Mick's called Muck in it or whatever. Like, but I was supposed to be straight man. Mick was supposed to be like the comedy. Whatever, but then I ended up kind of blurring where we both ended up being these comedy kind of elements. Mick let me improvise a lot, which was great. But he just he approached me. Me and Joshua Burnside were playing like a Christmas gig or something, and Mickey's a legend. I love him. But he approached me at this gig in Lavery's around Christmas 2016 or something, and just went, it's like, I'm thinking about I've got this idea to do like a wee sitcom kind of thing.
Pure Roma, man.
Yeah. And he was like, I'm trying to say this to you without offending you. This is what he said to me. He's going, there's a lot of comedy gold to be mined from someone that's had your experiences. Whatever. And I was like, right, okay. So you're saying you think my life's a joke? And he was like, kinda. I was like, okay, cool, I can go with that. And so we just went with that and ran with it. Like
But it was people should know it was a massive hit.
It was great, yeah. It was
and there was talk. I don't know, just maybe it was online about like a series, or is that something that's just? It could have been just
it
something
was weird.
Was online,
you should get Mickey in to talk about it, because he had like a very in-depth experience with it. Like I don't know the exact ins and outs, but the BBC kind of took it. They took the idea, they bought it, and like it was Mickey's baby, you know. And we were like, whoa, is this gonna happen? And like, but then BBC started changing it here and there and things like that. And then,
so they, would that have meant that Michael and yourself would have still been in it, or were they writing it for somebody else, or?
Well, that's what we kind of thought. But then the BBC kind of changed it, and we just wanted Mick, we were a bit gutted, obviously, but we wanted Mick to be successful.
But there's something about that sort of quick, haphazard type of thinking compared to this: do it again, isn't there?
Yeah, it was like I think. We recorded a second series anyway, so we did ourselves, but it hasn't been put out anywhere. Like hopefully it comes out someday. But
is that something that, you know, seeing by showing the power of who approached you the first time, what about other avenues for the next one that maybe would take it?
I think I think again that would be Mickey's kind of. That would be like he knows. I've said to him I would do it again in a heartbeat, you know, because we had such, like, at the time. I was sleeping on Mickey's sofa, you know, as well. So it was kind of art imitating life, like, in a weird way. Except in the show, it's him sleeping on my sofa, or whatever. But I was actually sleeping.
He morphed into you.
He morphed into me. It's just
well, look, that was something that, as I say, when it came out, it was because I'd heard about something saying, and I was thinking, oh, that's brilliant. It's great. If
see the things you got to do to try and shift some music now. You got to write books. You got to create sitcoms.
Like, man, you have done it all, you know, and a fantastic ice cream maker too, and skateboarder as well. But look, I should say, earlier on, you done 2 live tracks, and it was a great honour for us that you went back in your archives. And so for people that may or will be listening, could you just tell us about the 2 songs and when they came from? Because you said earlier on, Tony, they were real old, from where your early EPs or something.
One of the songs I played called Spiders. It's on the Inches EP. It's got a lovely arrangement with violin and harp and piano and stuff. It's kind of almost like chamber music or something like that, but it's beautiful. Like Dara Gillen played harp on it, amazing musician. Sabrina Rogers, incredible producer and musician. She played violin, she was incredible. So credit where credit's due for them. And they took it to another level. But yeah, that song I wrote that song probably around 2005, 2006. There you go. So it was before, like, As a Wi-Fi was established and stuff like that. I remember writing it on a particularly heartbroken weekend or whatever.
Did you have a wee romance?
I'd had a wee romance.
Was there a wee was there a wee hacky and all that?
I was like, oh, none of that.
None of that. No. Was just for
stay at distance. That's where I went wrong.
You just sort of blew kisses from afar.
Blew kisses and just kind of just lobbed or nags.
So you just, it was all over. You're going to go, I'm going to write this song, and the world's going to know who it is.
Well, it was just like that pathetic thing of kind of. I remember saying before that love songs are almost like, I don't know, can I swear? Is that all right?
Swear away.
Love songs can be like emotional dick pics.
Aye.
You know, because the people that are the receiving end of the love song, they didn't ask for that. And you're just giving it to them like it's an emotional dick pic. Like, just firing it out.
Aye, well, and in that sense too, it's one of the most popular dick pics there is. But I suppose, like, and then,
that song, Spiders, it's 16 years old. And then the other song I played, Last Day on Earth, it's the second last song and outro.
Aye.
And I see my Spotify stats, and that song is very rarely listened to or whatever. Like people listen to the start of the album and then or they just go to the singles or whatever, you know.
I should too.
But this song's like one of the ones at the end. And I think it starts a bit kind of slow and things like that. It's whatever, it's kind of like, it's almost, I remember saying when I was recording it, because Herb McGee played bass on it and Andy Coles played drums and co-produced it. I remember saying, kind of going, I want to make it like the band, but if the band were writing the darkest song they'd ever written. You know, like Levon Helm and those guys were doing something really like lyrically dark. So that's the kind of feel with it. But I wanted it to be like, you know, you're finally falling in love, but tight one, it's the end of the world. I figured out last year that so many of my back catalogue songs seem to be, lyric wise, they slot in with the pandemic and the lockdown and things like this. Like,
you seen it?
Like, I think I had a bit of Nostradamus going, Nostradamus!
There's going to be 4 pigeons landing Port Stewart at 0800 hours in 2025, and the third one from the left is going to shit on your forehead. You'll have luck forever.
Do you want to see? When lockdown started and I was in Glasgow, I remember going out for a run, or whatever, and seeing this is like, it was one of the saddest things I've ever seen. But you know, like the magpie thing, you know, if you see one magpie it's bad luck and you see 2 it's good luck, or whatever.
3 for a girl and 4 for a boy.
That's it.
5 for silver. What's the next? 6 for gold. 7 for a secret never to be told.
And that's what. And then you just repeat it again.
Yeah.
Magpie. I saw, but there was a magpie that had been hit by a car. Was dead. No. And the other magpie was standing over it, just going, ah!
No way.
Just mourning its partner, you know, whatever.
Shit.
And I remember just going, right, that has to be a pretty bad omen for the. And that was the start of lockdown. That was just as lockdown was happening.
So the magpie sacrificed his life so you could feel it. And but so so your new album, it's not out there yet.
No, it comes out digitally and for order and vinyl.
Yeah.
The first VerseChorusVerse album available on vinyl. It comes out on Friday the 21st. So that might be that might have happened already by the time, I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever. But it's this for me and you in real time. It's this coming Friday.
This coming Friday in real time for me and Tony. Mm-hmm. But for you people listening out there, the album is coming soon. and it's just for people that
it's a different album.
Yeah, and so I heard the single on it. It's got a bit of groove to it. Yeah. It's got and there's a good wee hook in it, and it seems to be getting played a lot on the radio locally. I know Steve McCauley played it, and Ralph and different people played it.
Tom Robinson's been giving it
brilliant
Radio 6,
and that's really good.
In Dublin, it's been getting a good few spins and stuff.
That's deadly, you know. And
Galway and Cork have been like radio, the more like. Instead of your RTEs, your BBCs, like targeting the other stations.
But they're all there. They have their audience too.
Yeah, totally.
And the good thing about them localised stations is if you were going down into an area then and touring, it's really important, isn't it, that the station locally would be plugging your
Massively
song? Because it can help so much, can't it?
Massively so. And the little local newspapers, all that stuff.
Oh, brilliant.
Do you know who was? I used to go with Pepperbook days.
Yeah.
Anthony Toner used to work at the Coleraine Chronicle. The songwriter Anthony Toner.
There you go.
That's how I first met him, and we would come in, and he was always so supportive because we were young musicians. He was a musician.
There you go.
And I remember he asked us what style of music we were. And I still use this reference when anybody asked me what style of music we were, because we were like, oh, we don't want to be pigeonholed. And he went, shall I just put you down as Afro-Hungarian township jive? And I still use that if people ask me. So what sort of music do you play? Afro-Hungarian township jive. It's probably. I hope that's not racist.
It sounds like one big massive dance mix out there. So what is the plans then? You know, I know that we are where we are and everybody knows, but we're starting to see a wee bit of light at the end of the tunnel. And last year was been sort of a very tough time, and horrific time for a lot of artists and musicians and crews and people that structure everything. I suppose there's bits of movement now. What's your feelings on coming back to gigs, and how do you feel it'll all go? Or do you think...
I think... me and you were talking. I think it's gonna be the Roaring 20s. But it's gonna be a dichotomy, because I think it's gonna take some people. I think it's gonna take quite a lot of us a long time to totally readjust. Mm-hmm. But I think once it does, and once live music's playing again and things like that, like I think the appetite for live music will be stronger than it's ever been. Yeah, well,
that's very interesting, and I suppose. But you're sending out that positive vibe, and that's.
I think. Well, like my album's called "What If We Won," and it's for, like, it's for everyone. You know, it's like, what if we won? You know, like we spend so much time kind of just like thinking about the worst case scenario, but that isn't always the way things work out. Sometimes things work out all right.
Yeah.
And sometimes things
even in the worst scenarios, there's an all right in there. Yeah.
There's like something terrible happen, but it opens another door.
Yeah.
Or whenever something happens, then it's like. there was like, I think last year we were all in our houses and we were just watching the world burn and turn to shit with these fascists in power and just and all that whatever, but like things are starting to turn and change, and but I think I've got so much faith in the young in the future. They're more clued in than we are, like than we were. You know, and they've got it's. I wish we'd done better for them, but I think that they're going to surprise a lot of us.
Well, I mean, like anything in life, new beginnings happen all the time, and it's new voices, new attitudes, a new message, and like obviously we know what's happening around the world and in different parts of the world. There's a lot of tragedy going on at the minute. There's places that are still there's activities going on that shouldn't be going on, and everybody's going to have an opinion. But when this is going on, as the great Sir David Attenborough says, you know, we can still, there's never too late for change in anything, you know, so it's the same thing, what you've just said there. So the young people are the change, and we hope that there's plenty of creativity within that in the future. I know you do, and I know, because I know when I said earlier on, I didn't mention much about your mentor, and you've mentored a lot of young bands, a lot of young songwriters, and you are the voice they phone now. You're the phone call, you know, the BMI boy or whatever you were saying. You're the phone call now, and they're hoping you'll answer. And I applaud you for that, and I know that you're doing great work in the hothouse with Marty, and you're making time for that, and being creative, and being an actor, and coming all that time from Portrush to where we are now. For me, on behalf of what my crew, which is, I always say, is small but massive crew. And actually, just because you're here, it's back on the wall now again behind me, and Paul Connolly done that wee thing, Never Be Beat, 78 tour I went on with him, Tony, one time. I was a tour manager. I know, you laugh away because you were laughing all day, you know exactly what went down. But it's been brilliant having you in, and thank you so much for coming into the Small But Massive podcast. And so just before
thank you for, and you guys, for everything, for the past 13, 14 years.
No, respect to you for that. But just before you go, maybe just tell people, because I should say, you put a wee thing up one time on Spotify about the amount of songs that you're connected to. That person in Nashville mightn't say now, is that all the songs you have? I just thought I'd mention that. And the amount of albums and the different... and from behalf of us, if you're out back on tour again, maybe you'll come and do a wee gig for us. And if that all opens up again, I'm like yourself, positive and optimistic as can be. And so just give people a wee run of where online. I know there's a user Spotify and all, but if it comes from you, then they can check it out, you know.
Well, there's like there's that playlist Spotify you're taking that is called "And So Verse Chorus Verse Watches Dr. Hannigan from Afar."
That was well rehearsed down there. Damn it, anyway, were you reading my finish there? No.
That was the second choice of name for the band. But it's I think there's, that's Spotify, and there's like, I think that's 82 odd tracks on there. That's all the stuff that I've written that's commercially available.
Yeah.
Loads of stuff done that isn't on there. And then, but yeah, there's this new album coming out. But please get it on Bandcamp and just like, you know, order the vinyl that way. And then I'm doing this.
So you want people, just say that again, you want people directly to go on Bandcamp?
Go to the VerseChorusVerse Bandcamp and like to buy the digital download there, or if they prefer to buy the vinyl, and they'll get a free digital download with the vinyl.
There's more value, you're saying, with Bandcamp, and then
because the artist gets paid.
And then you've got Bandcamp Fridays for people out there too.
Yeah,
stuff like that.
Exactly. Like, fingers crossed they're going to be doing more of those. But stuff's on Spotify as well. You know, even though they are evil and horrible. And as a musician, I hate them. As a music lover, I think they're great. But as a musician, I hate them. But having said that, I'm gonna say what I'm doing with my album, and I'm sure other musicians have done it, and I think this would be a pretty good way to go forward with it. I'm putting out the album on Bandcamp only for a few weeks, and then go to streaming services with it.
Yeah.
Like, that's the way the film industry works, whereby they will put a movie in the cinema when they open again, and then they appear on like the streaming sites.
Yeah, that would
Why
be.
don't musicians do that?
That would be interesting. Now, just what you're saying there, what you're going to do there. That'd be interesting for people to know how that all went and why you're doing that. And I think what that takes, Tony, is probably. If you're putting out any information online or anything, just be relentless with that message. Hashtag the what you want, and the bandcamp rather than the other dudes.
Yeah, bandcamp is like the priority, and I think every musician would tell you the same. I think to go via that way, but then it's like we all have Spotify accounts, so if you just want to hit follow Verse Chorus Verse, there's plenty of genres on there to chew on.
Yeah. Well, you've just named a gazillion bands on one title. It's like a Grand National entry. Some of them fell at the first hurdle.
I'll put my Spotify earnings on that horse.
And some done better. But Tony, you're being a star, man, and I thank you, and it's good to see you smiling. So Tony, thank you very much. I hug you from afar. You've heard it a million times over COVID. Go to Dr. Hannigan. Get your vaccine. There you go. And read a paperback book, and everything will be all right.
That's your life sorted out.
Here, there's an extra verse, but there always is an extra chorus as well. So drink up, be merry, and Tony, when you're out on tour, we hopefully see you soon. Give yourself a round of applause. Thank you very much.
Should we end with a Tree of Life?
Tree of Life. This is going to be the big buzzword now. Tree of Life. I should say at this stage that Tony is deadly at the Tree of Life. Okay, Tree of Life. Tree of Life. Look at that there. For all you people out there. We can do it. What's it called again? The Tree of Life. Tree of Life. It's called Tree of Life. Oh my God, we're still down there. We'll give the rock sign, we give the country western stance, and we do the famous. So good night.